Nurture Fund. But also we will, you know, if we don't get to everything, we also have a frequently asked questions document available online that we do keep updated also. And I will bring up shortly as well the email address that you can submit questions directly to. Okay, so we'll move on and just give you a bit of background to the Creative Youth Plan. So in March of this year, we launched the new Creative Youth Plan. It's the Creative Youth Plan to cover 2023 to 2027. And it is a successor to the original Creative Youth Plan that was originally published in 2017. The Creative Youth Plan was launched by Minister Catherine Martin alongside Minister Norma Foley, Minister Roderick O'Gorman and Minister Simon Harris. And the plan itself will be implemented through an interdepartmental creative youth working group made up of those departments. So our department here in Department of Culture, along with the Department of Education, the Department of Children, Equality, Disability, Integration and Youth, the Department of Further and Higher Education, Research, Innovation and Science, and the Arts Council. And the plan itself is available online on our website. Now, next slide. So there's so many definitions of creativity and there remains much debate about that. So within the Creative Youth Plan, it talks about the most appropriate skills and behaviours, which are those which support the development and learning, such as curiosity, resilience, imagination, discipline, and collaboration. But there's endless possibilities under Creative Youth and under the Creative Ireland programme, just some of which are listed there. So it covers not only kind of visual and visual arts and dance and music. There is street arts and spectacle, architecture, podcasting. So many forms of creative technology, even, you know, cooking. So you know, the realms of possibility within this fund are endless. Next slide. So we are rolling out our department is supporting the Creative Youth Nurture Fund. It's a pilot to support youth-led cultural, artistic and creative engagement to encourage equity and diversity. So it's looking to support individuals and organisations that reach very specific cohorts of young people. Those young people kind of may have barriers to regular creative engagement, and we'll go through them shortly. So the funding is for projects that can nurture the creative passions and ignite young people's creative potential. So the applicants will be expected to work with an age range of 6 to 20 up to 24 years old, implementing a youth-led approach, which we'll go through shortly. And as part of that, evaluation will be a key part of the pilot. So gathering data and information on how the project is going. So next slide. So the cohorts that we're looking kind of for these organisations and grantees to work with would be young people who are aged 6 to 24 who may be living with physical or intellectual disabilities, those that are refugees and asylum seekers, those living with mental health issues, those from the LGBTI plus community, those from the Traveller and Roma community, those within or transitioning from the care system, and those engage with the youth justice system, incarcerated persons and ex-offenders. Next slide. So the overall pot, there's €500,000 available across 2 years to support Creative Youth Nurture Fund projects. So it is expected that projects with budgets of between a minimum 50,000 up to 90,000 will be funded across 18 to 24 months in duration. So we expect kind of between 8, maybe up to 10 projects could be supported through this fund. We do welcome also, though, co-funding of projects. So if there is availability of other public funds or business or other charitable contributions, that is welcome as part of your project. But if you are awaiting funds from an alternative source, please outline this in your application and include the time frame when you expect to be notified of the outcome, because it might impact on your project timeline and budget requirements. Next slide. So we're looking for collaborative applications from, but not limited to, youth organisations, charities, not-for-profit, philanthropic or research bodies, individuals, community groups and networks. arts and cultural organisations or institutions, creative organisations, networks, museums, galleries, art centres, education centres and bodies, social enterprises. Local authorities can get involved as a partner, not necessarily as a lead, but as a partner, with another organisation, businesses, also education and training boards, as well, kind of within the departments in those ETBs. But I suppose really what's really important is that you're actually reaching kind of these specific cohorts of young people, and you can kind of demonstrate that. Next slide. So what are we looking for through the applications? So the applicants should be able to demonstrate a commitment to supporting children and young people to access culture and creativity in the arts. How they can reach and support children and young people who may experience barriers to access creative and cultural opportunities, but particularly those across the priority groups we've listed previously. What is key in this project is that it's youth-led. So how you will facilitate participation from children and young people in the development of their creative initiative using best practice is key. So the young people that you work with really need to participate and have a say in how it's designed, developed, and even kind of the feedback that's gathered towards the latter part of the project. And this, youth participation is outlined in the National Youth Participation Framework. And my colleague Sarah Quigley from Hub na nÓg, which is the National Participation Office, will be on shortly to give an overview of that participation framework so you can learn more. You'll have to demonstrate kind of how you will support engagement by children and young people across many forms of creativity, and how you may kind of evaluate and report on the process and outcomes of the project with the input from the children and young people. Next slide. So successful applicants would be expected to participate in evaluation, and we don't want this to overtake the project. Or really, the core of the project is it's youth-led, and you're reaching young people, and in engaging in creativity. But this is about kind of how we can, learn more, or create kind of future learnings on working with children and young people. So it is important, I suppose, to evaluate and provide some outcomes of the project and learn kind of from maybe, barriers or challenges that were experienced throughout the project. Next slide. So there we have also, and this is included in our briefing, an overview of kind of a marking available and how the applicants will be assessed. So there's a few different criteria. There's approach to facilitating strong participation for the children and young people, experience of working effectively with those children and young people, the project idea and its creative approach, the project team, track record and experience, and the feasibility of the project and the evaluation. So shortlisted applications will be assessed by a panel that will include representation not only from the departments, but we will ensure that there's youth represented on the actual evaluation of what the successful projects may be. Also, there may be, as part, just to make you aware, as part of the application process, there may be kind of in the latter stages, face-to-face kind of meetings, just to kind of learn more before the results of the evaluation are finalised. Next slide. So budgeting, what can the costs be, or the funding be used for? So kind of some areas that that it may be used for is costs to kind of have a coordinator involved to help roll out the project and help with the experience in youth participation, costs that it costs and kind of convening and coordinating the group of young people and helping them to design and oversee the implementation of the scheme. Documentation costs, evaluation costs, and gathering data, and networking or showcasing of the initiatives through your scheme. But that, you know, it's not limited to that. So if you have any questions, kind of continue to email us, and we'll give you more information on our frequently asked questions. Ineligible costs, we wouldn't be, you know, costs, you know, we wouldn't, funding can kind of go towards, you know, obviously something that's not directly related to the project. Retrospective costs, you know, expenditures in relation to, you know, from when, you know, the project is approved to kind of go ahead. It's not for capital, you know, requests in relation to like building improvements or workspaces of that. Or it's not intended for applications in relation to like to television series or advertising campaigns. Next slide. So here are a number of key dates in relation to it. The fund has been, the applications page has been open on submit.com since the 24th of April. The closing date is the 9th of June at 5 p.m. So we would urge everyone to log in to submit.com. I can't stress this enough. Don't leave it too late to kind of get in, you know, register with submit.com, have a look at the application form, get comfortable with it, and make sure you're preparing it. You know, you can save as you go, so make sure you start that process early enough, because you know, there's nothing worse than having technical difficulties near to the deadline. It's very difficult to manage that at the last minute. So and we'll show you at the end just some examples of questions on the submit.com system. And we'll endeavour to inform of the results towards in and around July. So if you have any queries, you know, you can go email creativeireland@tcagsm.gov.ie using the subject heading Creative Youth Nurture Fund. So there's still time before the deadline to ask questions as you go along. Okay. Now I'll hand it over to Sarah quickly.
Hi everybody, and welcome. Thanks a million, Kate. So I'm just here from Hub den Oak. So Hub den Oak was set up by DCE DIY to support the implementation of the National Participation Strategy. So I'm just going to run you through the National Participation Framework so that it can help you in your application for the Nurture Fund. So just an overview of Hub den Oak. We support government departments, state agencies and NGOs to give children and young people a voice in decision making. And our focus is on those children and young people that are often seldom heard. So you pop on to the next slide for us there, would be great. So this presentation has been developed to support youth in the Nurture Fund. So I'm going to just bring you through how and why the framework was created. I'm going to just run through the guiding principles and just how it can be used to highlight the participation of children and young people within your fund application. So if you're applying for a Nurture Fund, I'm sure you already have a lot of experience working with children and young people, and you already probably do a lot of this, but this National Participation Framework it's a tool that was created to build capacity and a consistency of approach. So it should be looked at in that way, that it's just a tool to be used to enhance the work that you're already doing. So we can go on to the next slide for us, that'd be wonderful. Thanks a million. So what is the framework? So the framework was developed by Hub den Oak in collaboration with Professor Laura Lundy from Queen's University. It was created to support the implementation of the national strategy on children and young people's participation in decision making. It was a lengthy process. They went through 50 drafts, and it involved lots of feedback, lots of focus groups with professionals working with children and young people. And also all of the tools within the framework were piloted by professionals who work with children and young people. So at the core of this participation is a tool to help professionals working with children and young people. So it supports organizations to improve practice. And it is underpinned by the UNCRC and the UNCRPD and the Laura Lundy model of child participation. So it's children's rights based. It's a rights based approach that will support you in the effective planning, coordination, and evaluation. So we go on to the next slide for us. So I just want to give you a quick overview of the UNCRC and the UNCRPD. So that's the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child and the United Nations Conventions on the Rights of Children or Rights of People with Disabilities. And these are both absolutely beautiful documents that are created in order to ensure that all children and young people are equal and have equal rights within the world. So There are 42 articles in the UNCRC, and it is a legally binding international agreement that sets out an integrated framework of obligations and rights. So the obligations are on the state parties and the governments, and the rights are those of the children. So the framework is based on one of the 4 key articles, and that's Article 12, which states that state parties shall assure that a child who's capable of forming his or her views has the right to express those views freely in all matters that affect the child, and the views of the child are given due weight in accordance with the age and maturity of the child. And it's also within this, we also draw on Article 7 of the UNCRPD, which requires that the child is given the age-appropriate assistance and the communication requirements necessary for them to express their views, and therefore, obviously, for those views to be given due weight. So we just go on to the next slide. I'll just read through these quickly. So the aim of the framework is to achieve the overall objectives of the National Participation Strategy. Again, it's just about improving and establishing mechanisms to ensure that seldom heard and vulnerable children and young people are listened to and involved in decision making. And it's about mainstreaming the participation of children and young people in development of policy, legislation, services, and research. So we just pop to the next slide. Thanks a million. So the vision of the framework is participation with purpose. So that needs to be looked at in 2 interrelating factors: the purpose of the organisation and the purpose of involving children and young people in decision making. So this is obvious in your situation if you're here to get information about the Nurture Fund. So the Nurture Fund is to engage young people that are too often seldom heard, and to empower them to develop innovative projects that can nurture their creative passions and ignite their creative potential. So it's obvious the purpose of involving children and young people in this fund. And the idea of purpose is avoid getting stuck in that process of doing participation. When you're asking children and young people their views and opinion, you're ensuring that there is a purpose to those. So when you ask them for their opinions, you're ensuring that they will activate change, be that in day-to-day activities and practice, or in the development of projects or programs, or anything that is rolling out within the fund. So it's always about influencing outcome or initiating change. Next slide, please, Sarah. Thanks a million. So a quick look at what is participation. So participation is defined as an ongoing process which includes information sharing and dialogue between children and adults based on mutual respect, and in which children can learn how their views and those of adults are taken into account and shape the outcomes of such processes. So in practice, they are very much their own present in which they are learning and growing and developing. I'm sure this is something you're all well aware of as practitioners, that although children and young people live in our world, they live in their own parallel society that has their own language and names for places and things. And so we, as adults, participation is all about identifying and recognizing that that parallel society with its own ways of being is as important and valuable as adults. And the only way to unlock those is by the experiences of children and young people and understand their views is through listening to the actual lived experiences of young people from their unique standpoints. And remembering also, it's not here, but that children have the evolving capacity to participate in decision making as they grow. And that's our responsibility as the adults in their lives and professionals working with them to facilitate them in making their voices heard in those different evolving capacities. Next slide, please, Sarah. Thanks a million. So just a quick note on what participation is not, because I think this comes up as like the biggest barrier, especially when we're trying to communicate it to other people. So participation is not handing over complete power to children and young people. As I said earlier, it's about mutual respect, that open dialogue between adults and young people. Participation is also not believing that children and young people are the only experts in their lives. Adults have considerable expertise in the lives of children and young people, but we don't always know how they feel, how they think, what they like, what they dislike. And so that's why it's so important to have adults and young people working together to enable the best decisions. Also, children and young people's views, most importantly, must be balanced with their other rights, their other 42 rights. They must be kept safe and protected from harm at all times. So they're entitled to share their voices and view their opinions, but it's not always about giving them what they want, but it is about giving due weight to their views and explaining some why their views may not have been taken on board. And next slide, please, Sarah. Quick drink here. So I'm just going to run through the 9 overarching principles. These are directly from the UNCRC general comment on Article 12, which explains how to ensure that the rights of children are upheld. So transparent and informative. So if you're asking young children, young people to participate, you must give them full age appropriate and accessible information. And that information has to outline how the participation will take place, its scope, its purpose, and the potential impact that can have to activate change. Voluntary, obviously, we can't coax children and young people to participate, and they must be able to stop participating at any time. Respectful, adults must take into account the socioeconomic, environmental, and cultural context of young people's lives. We must provide the space for them to share their views, and we must be respectful of what they say. Relevant, again, we need to ensure that when we're enabling the participation of children and young people, we're drawing on their own lived experience, their own knowledge, and their own skills. Child-friendly, all environments and working methods must be child-friendly, and different levels of support provided when needed. Inclusive and non-discriminatory. So of course, this is what we're always trying to do when we're coming to things from a rights-based approach, is to ensure that we are avoiding patterns of discrimination, making sure that consideration is given to equal opportunities to participate, especially with those that are seldom heard. It's about identifying and removing all those barriers, and ensuring that the programme is culturally sensitive as well. So supported by training, not just training in participation, also training in active listening, child protection, anything that is needed to ensure that children and young people are safe and protected from harm. So again, the safe and sensitive to risk, have your child safeguarding statements, your risk assessments, your DLP, accountable, follow up with the children and young people about where their views went, what you did with their voices and their opinions, and just evaluate how you incorporate participation. Next slide, please, Sarah. Now, okay, prioritizing children and young people's perspective. So just a few practical points on doing this. So seek their blue sky thinking rather than issues determined by adults. This is best exemplified by asking those big open questions. So you might start with a question like, what is creativity to you? Or you might ask, what do you like to make, do, or see? So those big questions that enable children and young people to really draw on their own knowledge and experience. Avoid giving opinions or information. I think we always forget about this, the power of an adult's voice, and how a lot of children and young people want to give us the right answer. So just ensuring that when you're doing a consultation, it's important to create a space free from influence so they can draw on their own beliefs. And making sure that what we're asking is accessible and age appropriate. And if it's not, perhaps pilot your questions with a group of children and young people to ensure that it is understandable for everybody. And then when you're consulting with them, when you're getting the information back, avoid placing adult interpretations. So if a young person draws a picture or writes something, ensure you're asking them to what that means exactly. If they're using slang words, asking them what that means exactly and writing down exactly what they meant by that. Next slide there, please. And then giving feedback to children and young people. So these are Laura Lundy's 4 F's. We've got full, friendly, fast, and followed up. So full, again, it's about that open dialogue and discussion between adults and young people. You need to be really clear on what views were accepted, what were not accepted, and the reasons why. And you do that in a language they understand, in a format that they understand, always child-friendly, and ensuring you do fast and followed up. So at each step in the process, make sure you go back to young people and tell them what's going on with their views and opinions. Some processes will take quite a while, but it's really important to just go back as often as you can, just ensure they know where their voices have gone. Now, next slide, please. And here it is, the Lundy model. Ta-da! So I'll just fly through this very quickly for you. This is what the whole framework is based on, and all of our checklists in the framework. So all of that previously is the background, and you can find all of that on our Hub na nÓg website. The whole participation framework, it goes in depth into all those pieces I covered. But these are the tools that we're going to go through now really quickly that are going to enable you to just improve your practice, enhance your practice that you already do. So this Lundy model is a way of looking at Article 12 and ensuring that you have fully activated the whole article. So you can see it's broken into 4 quadrants here, and also 2 stages. So you have stage 1 and stage 2. So stage 1 is space and voice, and that's the first half of Article 12, the right to express views. And then stage 2 is audience influence, and that's the second half of Article 12, the right to have those views given due weight. So you can find this on the Hub na nÓg website, but I'll just go through a few of these checklists quickly because I know we want to leave time for questions. So we'll just move to the next slide, please, Sarah. So these are the checklists we have: planning checklist, evaluation checklist, everyday spaces checklist, and the child and youth feedback forms. So if we just go on to the next one, and I think we've got the planning checklist here. So this one here is going to be the most beneficial for you in your application process. This is the planning checklist. This is for those big piece projects, and this is something that you should sit down with your team or your partners and just go through these questions, because these will allow you to identify how you have what you already do or what you can do to make sure that children and young people are participating from the very start. So again, it's got those 4 quadrants, and as I said earlier, the top 2 quadrants are the first stage of the article and bottom 2 are the second stage. So I'll just read one question from each just so you get an idea. So it's like, how will their involvement be sustained? How will you ensure that the key focus of the process stays on topics you identified? How will children and young people know to whom, how, and where, when their views will be communicated? And how will children and young people be informed about the scope they have? So it's very easy to follow checklist that just helps you reflect on your practice and how you're going to move forward with it. So if we go on to the next one, it's just the evaluation checklist. And that is exactly the same as planning checklist, just done in past tense. So it's just for you and your team after you've done it to sit down, reflect on what you've done and how you've enacted the rights of children and young people to participate in decision making. So again, it's just got those 4 quadrants and it's got all the questions for you to answer. And if you go on to the next one there, Sarah, so this is the everyday spaces checklist. This checklist is not for those bigger pieces. This is for the everyday within your projects, within the creative projects that you're running. And it's about identifying how children and young people have a voice within those everyday spaces. So it's a lot of this is already done in services working with children and young people, like you'd be making contracts, you might have circle time, you might have like ballot boxes or graffiti walls where children and young people can feedback. But it's really important if you just look at this checklist and ensure that you're doing all of these sections when you're working with children and young people. If you go on to the next one there, so we've got the feedback form. So there's a selection of these within the framework that you can download from the Hub na nÓg website. And this one here is for groups. And again, it's broken into those 4 quadrants. So it's really easy to identify what sections might need strengthening, what sections you're doing really well on. So this is to be asked, and this has all been designed with children and young people as well. So the stars as a grading scheme, and also the smiley faces, happy face, mediocre face, all being designed. And again, these are just tools to inform your practice. So if you move on to the next one there, enabling factors, I'll just run through this. So these are the 4 enabling factors to underpin the framework, and they support organisations to involve children and young people in decision making. So again, it's about organisational buy-in, training, capacity building, resources, financial, human and time, monitoring and evaluation. I think this is a really important, the resources piece on time, and that it does take a lot of time to involve children and young people. There is a lot, you do need to put a lot of thought into removing all the barriers necessary and just how you plan on engaging them and keeping them engaged from the start to the end, and the process of doing that. So if you just move on to the next slide, I think we're just, so I just wanted to, before I finish up here, just to say that if you check out the Hub na nÓg website, up there we've got a lot of videos and case studies, and they give you best practice examples of how space, voice, audience and influence can be used. The videos are really helpful in just visualizing that, and they're done with organizations that have used the framework. Also, there is, because you are specifically with seldom heard cohorts, there is a seldom heard toolkit that's online, and that will be really helpful. It's a really practical tool that gives you like icebreakers, games, and also case studies of consultations done with seldom heard cohorts. So that's it. I'm going to sign off. Thanks a million for listening, everybody.
Thanks so much, Sarah. Kate, do you have anything more on the application?
Yeah, I'll just take you through briefly, and thanks a million, Sarah. That was really beneficial, I think. So this, it won't take too long. It's just to show you what the submit.com application form looks like online, but it is available also to download with all the material on the fund application page. So you can kind of print it off and have a look as well at what the questions were. So this would give you, this would give you an overview of what the system looks like. You just kind of answer the questions on drop downs and move to the next question. Just be cognizant of word counts and that. You just go to the next slide. For example, this is kind of where you would kind of add project partners. So you would apply and give your information as a lead applicant, but there is also space there to add anyone else that might be involved in the project as well, and give their details next. Also, just, there is pages there that you can upload and relevant material if you're referring to past experience or examples of, what your project might be. There's many different formats you can upload in for reference. And then also just there's an income and expenditure table, which you will be expected to fill out. Now you can add supplementary material also, but this, just to make sure that everything adds up. The minimum amount to be applied for is 50,000 up to a maximum of 90. So just make sure kind of you cover that in the funding that you're seeking, but also kind of the expenditure you put down, your detailed expenditure of where that will be going. As I said before, just make sure you put in other public funding other funding you might get, sponsorship or public funding elsewhere, to make up the overall budget for your project, if known at that point. So yeah, that's just to give you a flavour for the system.
Everyone, I suppose we'll open for questions now. I do just want to say, like, at the end of the day, we're trying to learn from this. So we really want to be partners with a limited number of organisations on this journey. So in the same way as we're going to have young people inform our selection of the final projects, we want to walk with you on the journey as to your project and how well or not it's reaching these young people. So I suppose many of you on this call have worked with Creative Ireland before as a Creative Ireland coordinator perhaps, or across our pillars. So you know how this works, which is we're okay with things not always working out. We're usually the first in for these kind of things, and we want to learn. So we're not expecting that you're going to have done all this before, have a brilliant sort of practice, but that you're going to be our partners in learning, because Minister Catherine Martin is very determined that the cohorts described here are a real focus of the new Creative Youth Plan. So this is a learning pilot both for us and perhaps for you. So look, if anybody wants to put more questions in the chat or unmute themselves, if there's a burning question, we'd be delighted to answer.
I just have a few from in chat, so I'll just go through them really quickly and we can just do it hands up after. Just quickly, very early on, Oisin Kenny asked, when should the project start following being successfully chosen for funding?
Yeah, so I mean, that all depends on the timelines. The intention is to start the projects this year before the kind of end of the year, and it's over a duration of, like, say, approximately 18 to 24 months. But that can be, ensure you factor that into kind of the timeline of the application to give us a sense of how long it will take. So.
And I just have one from Stephen Doyle as well. If a museum is a branch of a local authority, would the museum still be a valid lead applicant?
Yeah, so that if you are applying as the museum itself, that should be fine to apply.
Okay, I'll just move quickly to Hans. I just have a question from Zaid there. If you want to unmute yourself.
Sorry, I just wrote the question on the chat. I didn't know if
Oh,
you were
no
reading
worries.
the chat or not. Basically, my question would be regarding art therapy. So art therapy would be one of the creative arts, the Creative Art Association. And I'm just wondering, will that fit under the criteria or not?
Yeah, thanks a million for your question. So art, it would depend how you describe the creative medium of the project or the art therapy. We don't, we don't tend to, that would be a very specific space as far as we know in the kind of medical field. So for, it would need to be kind of more in the kind of creative space developed with the young people, as opposed to art therapy itself as it will be defined in in medicine or in the healthcare system. Yeah.
Perfect. I just have a question from Helen there.
Did you say Helen? Has she unmiked?
Hello. Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. My question is this. I just want to know, with the application, would it be important for us to put in references? Because I applied for something once and I wrote it and put in all the references, and I was told, oh, you didn't have to do that. And it did take a lot of time. So I just wanted to clear that today with the application. Do you have to back it up with references as we put it in the application? Thank you.
There is space in the application, thanks a million for the question, Helen, to refer to your experience and an opportunity to demonstrate that experience through various forms. So whether that is through, if that best describes it through references, that would be really helpful. But it's not, necessary. It could be different forms. It could be visual. It could be a video in terms of how you express the experience you have, your prior experience.
The other thing I would add is that submit.com does allow for letters of support. So in other grant rounds we've run, people might say, well, look, they're not a named partner, but I'm just attaching a letter of support from somebody who's going to be giving this to the project. So that just gives us a better feel that there may be others involved that are not listed as named applicants, if that makes sense, Helen.
Yes, thank you.
That's perfect. I just have a few more questions. So, would children in homeless services fit into the cohorts of people who can access this funding?
Yeah, thanks for that question. They're not listed specifically. I suppose we'd listed kind of 7 specific cohorts, and I suppose we want to be sensitive and around their kind of circumstances and situation. I mean, there may be overlap with other cohorts with regards to their situation, but it's if they hit the kind of other 7, yeah, that's that is absolutely fine. We're not limiting the kind of settings, but yeah, we haven't listed them specifically as a cohort, I suppose. We just want to be, I suppose, cognizant of the circumstances and how that might overlap into other areas, the other 7 cohorts.
I think there's a slight, I think we'd like to just pause, Deirdre, about a museum in answer to your question. Or sorry, I beg your pardon, not a museum, a library, because the libraries are already part of the culture and creativity teams in every local authority. The libraries are already accessing Creative Ireland funding. They're an integral part of the culture team, whereas I think the idea of the Nurture Fund is to widen the kind of partnerships that we have. So if you don't mind, we might just wait and reflect on the libraries question. Obviously, a separate museum or an art centre, which is part supported by the municipality, is something more separate. So I hope you understand we might just need to reflect on whether, because if it was open to every library in the country to apply, that might just shift the fund a lot. So maybe you'd leave that with us and we'll add it to the FAQ.
Perfect. So next question is, could the coordinator role be a youth worker to engage with the target group and implement the project?
Yeah, so it can be kind of led, or the project can be driven by a youth worker to implement the project, that should be fine.
Can an organisation apply to employ a scheme coordinator on a part-time basis over the duration of the project?
Yeah, funding can go towards having a coordinator on board to assist with the rolling out the project. Yeah, and that can be on a part-time basis.
Can a school apply? We are a special ed school coming through the Creative Schools programme and would be interested in partnering with our local ed partnership to submit something.
I suppose kind of in their briefing, we had specifically outlined, that we have a lot of other kind of funds and initiatives that run through schools, a huge amount actually, and within the education system. So for this fund in particular, we're not looking for schools to lead on the project specifically. There may be other ways to link young people in a school to a project, but the setting or the lead, the intention is not to have it through schools. When we can send, there is more availability on our website in terms of other initiatives that we have in Creative Youth for Schools. And if you email our Creative Youth mailbox, we can give you more information and links to those.
Okay. I noted capital works are excluded, but would a project that empowers a group of youths to develop a creative outdoor space to be used and designed by them be acceptable?
Yes, I think if that's the project, that obviously without predetermining that that's what the young people want to do, architecture is an art form covered by the Arts Act. So while the young people might be using it and designing it, presumably they'd be doing it with a landscape designer or an architect. And so the build cost could be covered.
Can an ETB youth service who leads out on the provision of after-school leisure activities be a lead in an application?
An ETB youth service, yeah, we don't see any reason. Yeah, they should be able to be a lead in, or they should be able to apply in an ETB youth service.
Would young carers be eligible to participate as a target group? Could be as a combined project with siblings with additional needs / disability / neurodivergent.
Yeah, I mean, if they link it within kind of those 7 cohorts, if you kind of look across them, they could be the kind of target cohort if they kind of link into those 7. Yeah. You can kind of specifically ask a little bit more, through the Creative Ireland website or email address as well.
And Janice says, to clarify, you can partner with the school / run a project with the school, but they can't be lead applicant.
We wouldn't set it in a school per se. No, I mean, yeah, so we wouldn't, the idea wouldn't be to kind of set it within the school setting. And by I mean school is primary or post-primary school. But again, like that, we can just pause on that one in terms of involvement of school. In terms of the setting, that's, it's not intended to hold them within the schools. Like I said, we run a lot of stuff in schools, so we can kind of give you more information on that. Yeah, so.
And finally, Emma asks, will you be able to reframe the description of the disabled priority group?
Yeah, I mean, in our frequently asked questions, we can be very clear. We can give examples of who might be included within that cohort.
I find that framing very difficult. As parents with an autistic kid and someone working with both intellectually, physically disabled people and neurodivergent people, it's very binary. And like if I was to bring that to a group, it would insult some of the people. So I find that really problematic. I don't mean to insult you. I'm just being frank. If that's
No, we
okay.
really appreciate the frankness. We
And
can certainly
as someone who's neurodivergent myself, it's just very reductive of the diversity of young people with learning differences and different ways of experiencing the world. And I just find that very difficult. So thank you.
No problem. We will be amending the FAQ, so we can certainly amend that very quickly.
In terms of documentation, would the production of, say, an animated video be eligible?
Yeah, animation, as Kate has already outlined, is one of the creative art forms covered. So I wouldn't see that being a problem.
Maureen asks, some after-school activities that are run for young people happen in a school environment after the formal education ceases. In this case, the school is no longer a formal educational space, but more of a safe space for the activity to take place. Is that okay?
Yeah, I think that sorry, go ahead, Tanya.
Yeah, I think if the school is just, it's only for the children in this school. But as Kate has, I think, said a few times, we're doing so much in schools, creative clusters, BLAST, teacher-artist partnership. Like literally, we've got about 15 projects to do with children in schools. So that's why we're really not focusing on schools for this particular fund, to try and widen the number of organisations that can work with us. But if it's merely the location in which the workshop is taking place and that's being offered free of charge, it's not just related to the children in that school, that should be okay.
Yeah, and Claire just asks, when will clarification on whether public libraries can apply will be available?
Yeah, we'll clarify that within the coming days as soon as possible. So that it'll be available on the FAQs as well.
Reid asks, I'm an artist and also work in mental health care for young people. Is it possible for clinicians to be lead applicants? Apologies if this was covered at the start of the presentation. I had some connection issues.
Yeah, that should be fine. Yeah.
That's everything. I don't think I missed anyone, I hope. Oh, Francesca has her hand up.
Hi, sorry, just making sure you can hear me, yeah?
Yeah.
Perfect. Sorry, just having a bit of connection difficulties there. At the start of the presentation, you said about evaluating and reporting. I'm just wondering, what would the roles and responsibilities for the successful application be regarding the evaluation and reporting on the project? If there is some now, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong.
So it would involve kind of the gathering of some of the information, like number of participants and who you were working with, you know, your own, I suppose, outcomes of the project, you know, how some of the feedback of the project, particularly from the young people. And also, I suppose, I mean, the funding can support, you know, and you ensuring you're able to kind of develop that evaluation and you know, create a report at the end. So that can go towards helping you in developing that.
Okay, so it would be very informal. There wouldn't need to be kind of a lengthy research or even a researcher role, say, involved. It's a very informal document then. Evaluation on the project, yeah.
No, I mean, we wouldn't envisage it to be like, you know, the need for an actual researcher,
Okay,
you
yeah.
know, but an involvement, you know, of evaluation. You know, we have kind of some examples of valuation kind of on our website in the publication section, but it's not to the intention, particularly with this these projects, is not to kind of overwhelm it with evaluation. It's to kind of complement and help yourselves and also us kind of learn from the projects.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you.
I have nothing further.
Well, if that's the case, Kate, I think we'd both like to just thank everyone. We did it in an hour. We certainly welcome working with some new partners, people with real expertise in reaching the particular groups of children and young people we're trying to reach. So thank you very much. Don't know if there's any last minute things you want to add, Kate, about dates or decisions.
Yeah, no, just to thank you so much for taking your time during this hour. Thanks for all the questions, all the feedback as well, and things for us to think about. We really appreciate it. You know, there is all the information, you know, we'll try to put as much online as possible. The email address was shared there also. So yeah, just to reiterate, the closing date is the 9th of June. So there's a bit of time, but just to get yourself comfortable with the system. And yeah, we hope to you know, hear more or be able to kind of get on board with partners during the summer. So we're really looking forward to it.